The refusal cost Clara Whitcombe her name before it cost her a home. Her father had arranged the reckoning in the long drawing room at Whitcombe House, beneath portraits of men who had chosen their wives and their heirs with equal confidence. Rain pressed against the windows. 40 wedding guests stood among palms and white roses while Ezra Whitcombe held out a marriage settlement in one hand and the deed to Blackmere Dye Works in the other. "You may sign for Mr. Rook," he said, "or you may take what remains of your mother's portion and trouble this family no further." The man selected for her, Gideon Rook, waited beside the cold fireplace. At 42, he owned 2 woolen mills downstream and had the smooth patience of a creditor certain that time worked for him. Clara was 28. For 12 years she had kept the color books in her father's finishing rooms, tested mordants, corrected foreman's recipes, and learned to recognize the temper of wool beneath her fingers. Yet the settlement described her future labor, property, and income as her husband's. Her mother's lips moved without sound. Clara's brothers watched with the strained embarrassment of men forced to witness an animal refusing a harness. "The works are worthless," Clara said. "Precisely," Ezra replied. "They were all your mother brought me that proved wholly hers. There are arrears of rates, a diverted stream, and buildings no insurer will touch. Sign one paper or the other." Clara looked at Gideon. Only that morning he had told her she could continue experimenting after marriage, provided every process belonged to Rook and Company, and her name appeared nowhere. He smiled now as if offering mercy. She took the deed. Someone laughed. Ezra's face did not change, but he rang for a servant and ordered Clara's trunk brought down. Her dowry was struck from the settlement. Her household allowance ceased. By the time the wedding breakfast had been cleared untouched, she was standing on the gravel with one trunk, a traveling cloak, her brass thread counter, a small lens, 2 dye spoons, and 6 shillings 4pence in her purse. Her mother came out without an umbrella. She pressed a flat wooden shuttle into Clara's hand. The beach was dark with use, and one edge bore 4 shallow notches. "Your grandfather made it for Hannah Bell," she whispered. "She taught me, and I taught you. I should have spoken sooner." Ezra called from the doorway. Clara's mother flinched, kissed her cheek, and retreated through the rain. Blackmere lay 9 miles north, beyond hedged fields and a turnpike that climbed toward the Pennine Moors. Clara paid 1 shilling for a carrier to take her and the trunk as far as Lowermere. She walked the final 2 miles beside a stream swollen brown by October rain. The dye works appeared below the road like a collection of broken teeth. A long stone weaving shed leaned toward the water. Half the slate roof had fallen over the eastern bays, leaving black rafters exposed. The chimney was split by ivy. 4 round copper vats stood beneath an open-sided dye house, green with corrosion and filled with leaves. Beyond them, the mill race was dry. A demolition notice had been nailed to the gate. The Blackmere Improvement Company, acting through Gideon Rook, intended to seek an order after 30 days on grounds of danger and unpaid parish rates. Clara read it twice. Then she saw a second paper beneath it. An offer from Rook and Company to assume the arrears in exchange for immediate conveyance of the land. She tore neither notice down. Anger was useful only when it could be made to keep accounts. The deed included a cottage, but its ceiling had collapsed into the front room. Clara found one dry chamber in the old counting house attached to the weaving shed. She cleared plaster with a broken shovel, stretched her cloak across the cracked window, and set her trunk beneath the soundest beam. At dusk, she ate bread saved from the carrier's basket and studied the property by lantern light. Blackmere had not merely failed. It had been stripped. The water wheel was gone, as were the carding engines and most of the looms, but whoever removed them had left a narrow hand loom under the fallen roof. Its breastbeam was rotten, and its warp had been cut away. A faded strip of fabric protruded from beneath it. Clara pulled gently. The cloth did not move. It was attached to a longer bolt that passed through a slot in the floor. She knelt, held the lantern low, and saw a corroded copper cylinder suspended between 2 joists. Its lid had been sealed with resin. The collapsed loom concealed it from above. Lime dust and a skin of verdigris made it look like part of an abandoned pipe. The cylinder opened only after Clara warmed the resin with the lantern chimney and worked around the rim with a dye spoon. Inside lay 9 yards of wool and linen cloth, rolled around a cedar core and protected by waxed paper. The ground was a dull madder red. Along both selvages ran a border of blue, black, cream, and yellow threads. At first, the irregularities looked like careless weaving. Some black threads crossed where blue should have appeared. Several knots faced backward. Groups of narrow cream picks interrupted the border at uneven distances. Yet the cloth itself was skillful. The tension steady, the edges exact, the color changes too deliberate to be mistakes. Clara placed her mother's shuttle beside the first repeat. Its 4 notches matched 4 of the narrow divisions. A footstep sounded in the passage. She extinguished the lantern. Someone entered the weaving room and moved directly to the shelves where old pattern books had once been kept. Wood scraped. A drawer struck the floor. Clara crouched behind the loom, the rolled fabric held against her ribs, while a shaded bullseye lantern cast a moving coin of light across the wall. The intruder searched for less than 3 minutes, then left by the western door. Clara waited until the sound of a horse faded along the track. The lock had not been forced. When she examined it, she found fresh oil and a scratch made by a well-cut key. She carried the fabric into the counting room, secured the door with a joist, and spent the night seated beside it. Gideon's offer was no kindness. Someone believed Blackmere contained the thing worth finding, and that person had searched for books but overlooked the language left on the loom. At dawn, the ruin gave Clara its first practical answer. The counting-house chimney drew poorly but did draw. A pump in the yard produced cloudy water after 20 strokes. The northern roof remained sound over 2 bays, and the stone walls there were plumb. She made an inventory on the blank leaves of her father's deed wrapper. Shelter, pump, hand loom, 3 usable shutters, 26 pounds of old iron, 4 copper vats of uncertain thickness, and 1 concealed bolt of cloth. Her liabilities were less encouraging. 11 pounds 8 shillings in parish rates, 4 pounds owed for drainage assessments, 30 days before Rook's petition, 6 shillings 4 pence in cash. She walked to the village of Blackmere with the bolt hidden beneath loose boards. The parish clerk, Mr. Hales, received her in a room behind the vestry. He was a narrow man with a prominent white brow and an ink stain on his cuff. "The rates attached to the property, Miss Whitcombe." She presented the deed. "Then the property can earn them. I require a schedule and the assessment maps." His surprise sharpened into annoyance. "The works have stood idle 18 years. The stream rights were surrendered." "To whom?" "Rook and Company maintains the channel." "That was not my question." Hales looked at the deed again. "You have until the magistrates hear the petition. I cannot alter that." "I asked for records, not alteration." He finally produced a rate book. Blackmere's assessment stopped in 1843, resumed in 1846 at a lower sum, then accumulated unpaid after 1862. Clara noted an oddity. The dye works occupied just over 5 acres according to the deed, but the rate map colored only 4 1/4. A narrow strip beside the mill race carried no number at all. Hales closed the book when she asked about it. Outside, a boy of perhaps 14 was repairing a basket with split willow. He had a twisted left foot and an alert, guarded face. "You are the woman at the old works," he said. "I am the owner. Mr. Rook says the walls will kill someone." "One wall may. That is why no one enters without me." The boy considered this. "My name's Samuel Pike. My gran worked there before it shut." "Is she living?" "Some days better than others." Clara paid him a penny to carry a notice to the blacksmith. "Old iron for sale, buyer to remove it." Samuel read the words before folding the paper, though he pretended not to. By afternoon, Thomas Vale, the village blacksmith, had offered 15 shillings for the scrap iron and 2 days' labor removing it. Clara accepted 10 shillings in advance and spent 5 on bread, candles, paraffin, oatmeal, nails, and a second-hand blanket. With the remainder, she hired Samuel for 3 mornings at 4 pence each to clear gutters from the sound northern bays. "Your foot will not manage the roof," she told him. His chin rose. "So you will stay below and tell Mr. Vale where his men are about to tread through rotten boards." That satisfied him. For 6 days they reclaimed 1 room from the ruin. Vale braced the western door, patched the counting-house grate, and confirmed that the smallest copper vat would hold water. Samuel removed nettles and sorted fallen slates. Clara scrubbed the northern floor, repaired the surviving hand loom with wood from a broken office partition, and hung the mysterious bolt where daylight could reach it without fading the dyes. Village women came to stare from the gate. One, a washerwoman named Miriam Pike, arrived to collect Samuel and found Clara boiling alum in an iron pot. "That stream killed fish for half a mile when the works ran," Miriam said. "My mother said the dyer's hands cracked until they bled." "Then it will not run as it did." "Every owner says different until prophet speaks." Clara did not ask for trust. She showed Miriam a square of undyed wool and the small trial vat she had lined with clean clay. "I need lichen gray and weld yellow, made without waste entering the stream. Bring me onion skins, alder bark, and clean wool from anyone willing to sell remnants. I will pay after the first cloth sells." Miriam's expression remained skeptical, but the next morning Samuel brought 2 sacks. Clara's first work was not beautiful. The wool was uneven, her mordant weak, and the hand loom slow. She wove 6 yards of hard-wearing striped cloth suitable for aprons. Miriam carried a sample to the market town and returned with an order from a draper for 12 yards at 1 shilling 8 pence per yard if the colors did not run. It was scarcely enough, but it made Blackmere a working property rather than an abandoned nuisance. At night, Clara studied the old bolt. Her teacher, Hannah Bell, had said that defects had grammar. A broken warp made a vertical fault. A tired weaver missed a pick irregularly. A deliberate substitution repeated according to intention. Clara counted with her brass lens. The black for blue changes appeared in groups from 1 to 26. The backward knots divided them. The cream picks came in groups no larger than 12. Letters and months, perhaps, but the order produced nonsense. The dye sequence offered another clue: madder, weld, indigo, iron black. 4 colors, 4 notches on the shuttle. When Clara aligned the shuttle to the first border, a hairline scratched into the beach pointed not along the weave but across it. The message was meant to be read from the weft, not the warp. She turned the cloth sideways. The substitutions now formed short columns. The first 3 translated through a simple alphabet: B-E-L. Bell. Hannah Bell had not merely owned the shuttle, she had helped make the cloth. Clara was copying the columns when Samuel called from the yard. 2 men in Rook and Company coats stood at the gate with measuring chains. Their foreman, Caleb Nunn, presented a letter claiming access to inspect the mill race. "Your company's channel lies beyond my boundary," Clara said. "Boundaries disputed." "Then you will not settle it by entering before the dispute is heard?" Nunn smiled. "There's a culvert under that shed. Unsafe, most like. Mr. Rook would hate for the boy to be buried." Samuel flushed. Clara placed herself between the men and the gate. "Mr. Rook may send a surveyor with written authority." They left after driving a red stake into the road verge. That evening, Clara found a second stake beside the dry race, 10 feet inside the line shown on her deed. She pulled neither out. She measured the distance using loom cord, recorded it, and asked Thomas Vale and Miriam to witness the marks. On the 10th day, a letter arrived from Gideon. He expressed concern for Clara's health, raised his offer by £2, and warned that a hazardous building order could leave her personally responsible for demolition costs. At the bottom, he added a private line: "Marriage remains the sensible shelter for a woman unused to consequence." Clara used the blank reverse to calculate roof slates. Her sales produced £1 4 shillings in the second week. Vale introduced her to a slater willing to make temporary repairs for £2 if she supplied sound, salvaged slate and helped sort it. Clara paid him 10 shillings, promised the balance in 3 installments, and closed the 2 worst bays rather than pretending to save the whole roof. The work exposed an anomaly. Rainwater from the western slope disappeared into a stone gutter beneath the floor, yet no outlet appeared outside. Samuel, small enough to crawl under the raised loom platform, found that the gutter joined a dry ceramic pipe aimed toward the sealed mill race. "It slopes uphill," he said. Clara checked with a bottle level. He was right, or nearly so. The pipe was not a drain. It had once carried water into the building. Behind the smallest copper vat, different mortar outlined a low arch. Vale tapped it with his hammer and heard a hollow note. "Could open it," he said. "Not until the roof above is braced." The decision cost her 3 days and earned his respect. They shored the joists with timbers bought from a dismantled barn. Only then did Vale remove the newer stones. The opening led to a narrow chamber beneath the dye house. It contained no treasure. There was a corroded pump, 2 stone settling tanks, and a series of ceramic pipes fitted with brass cocks. Silt covered the floor. On the wall, painted lines in 4 colors linked the tanks to marks labeled W, A, M, and I. "A water system," Clara said. Vale held the lantern higher. "Stream was outside. Why bring water under here?" Clara scraped mineral crust from one pipe. "Because it was not all stream water." One inlet pointed uphill toward the unnumbered strip of land. Another ran beneath Rook's diverted channel. A third connected to the roof gutters. Blackmere had separated water sources: soft rainwater for certain dyes, mineral water for others, stream water for washing, and settled waste before discharge. It was more careful than many modern works. On the pump casing, Clara found 4 notches identical to those on Hannah's shuttle. The woven message was not a letter alone. It was an operating key. Clara translated more columns. Bell kept 4 waters. Trust no copy with 3. The pattern then changed. Colored blocks corresponded to the painted pipe marks, followed by figures that might be measurements. Without the missing pattern books, she could not tell whether they described dye quantities, valves, or locations. Samuel's grandmother, Agnes Pike, lived in 2 rooms behind the cobbler's shop. She was 73 and nearly blind, with knuckles enlarged by a lifetime at the loom. When Clara placed the cloth beneath her hands, Agnes traced the border with 1 finger. "Hannah's counterpane," she said. "It was hidden at the works." "Not a counterpane, then." Agnes smiled faintly. She always said a pattern could remember what paper forgot. Agnes had entered Blackmere at 9 as a bobbin girl. Hannah Bell served as head colorist, though the wage books listed her as a common dyer. The owner, Josiah Whitcombe, Clara's maternal grandfather, had built the underground tanks after a fever outbreak blamed on fouled water. Hannah developed a method for fixing colors with less metal salt and trained 12 women to use it. "Mr. Whitcombe meant to give us a share," Agnes said, "not charity. A trust from the clean process. Then there was the fire." Clara knew of no fire. Her father had always said Blackmere failed through incompetence and debt. The counting room burned in winter of 43. Hannah was accused. Papers gone, formulas gone, a watchman hurt. Mr. Rook's father bought the stream lease while Josiah was ill. After Josiah died, your father closed us out. Was Hannah convicted? Never charged. Vanished before they could. Agnes gripped Clara's wrist. Your mother came once with that shuttle, asked where Hannah hid the true pattern. I told her I did not know. On returning to the works, Clara found the weaving room ransacked. The cedar core lay on the floor. The cloth was gone. Her knees weakened, but only for a moment. She had copied 47 columns and kept the pages inside her bodice. The thief had taken the original evidence, the surviving dye sequence, and whatever remained untranslated. Fresh mud crossed the floor to the western door. One print showed a triangular patch on the heel. Caleb Nunn's left boot had borne such a patch when he planted the survey stake. Clara went to the constable. He listened, asked whether she could prove the cloth existed, and suggested the ruin attracted vagrants. "Mr. Nunn entered my property." "Did you see him?" "No." "Then mind what you allege." Gideon came the following morning in a polished carriage. He stepped around puddles with care and surveyed the repaired roof as though it offended him. "You have made a brave display," he said. "But bravery does not discharge rates. Nor does trespass." His gaze moved to the empty loom. "Have you lost something?" Clara understood then that he possessed the cloth, but not its meaning. If he could read it, he would not have come. "Only time," she said. He offered £15 for Blackmere, enough to clear the arrears and leave a small sum. When she refused, he mentioned her mother. "Mrs. Whitcombe is unwell. Your continued defiance worsens her condition." "Then stop using her as a message." For the first time, his pleasant mask thinned. "You mistake stubbornness for independence. The magistrates will order the place cleared. When the buildings come down, whatever sentimental object you seek will be rubble." "You seem remarkably interested in my rubble." He left without answering. Clara's copied columns ended with 3 words: "At Bell's turn." There had been a bell at the works. Agnes remembered it hanging above the loading arch, rung at 6 in the morning and 6 at night. Only the iron bracket remained. Clara measured from the bracket, tried the distances woven into the cloth, and found nothing but wall. Samuel proposed that turn meant the road bend. Miriam thought it meant a bell-shaped valve. Vale said Hannah Bell herself might have turned something. Clara returned to the underground tanks. Each brass cock was frozen except the one marked M. Its handle turned a quarter circle. Behind it, the pipe entered the wall beneath the loading arch. They cleared silt and discovered a small paddle wheel inside a stone box. When water once passed through, the wheel would have driven a shaft upward. Clara traced the shaft into the wall and found a mechanical counter behind a removable brick. 4 enamel dials, each colored to match a waterline, displayed figures in faded black. The mechanism had recorded volume. Hannah's turn was each rotation of the wheel. The woven columns specified a sequence of valve turns. Clara could reconstruct only the first half, but it directed rainwater through one tank, mineral water through another, and the mixture toward a small testing cistern. It was the foundation of Hannah's clean process, not the complete recipe. More important, the wall behind the counter bore a stamped brass plate, Blackmere Separating and Recovery Apparatus, J. Whitcombe and H. Bell, Designer's Patent Application deposited, March 1843. The plate proved that Hannah's work had been acknowledged before the fire. It did not prove a patent had been granted or that Clara owned it, nor did it clear the rates. She wrote to the patent office in London, enclosing a copied inscription and asking whether a provisional specification survived. Postage took nearly a quarter of her remaining money. She also wrote to a solicitor in the market town, Miss Eleanor Say, whose discreet brass plate Clara had noticed above a stationer's shop. A woman advising on property might understand what it meant to have every assertion treated as emotion. Miss Say came 2 days later, wearing plain gray and carrying her own measuring tape. She examined the deed, the rate copies, the red stakes, Clara's transcription, and the underground apparatus. "The improvement company will say the chamber is unsafe and the cloth imaginary," she said. "Agnes can identify it. She can identify by touch a cloth no longer present. Useful, not sufficient. The brass plate supports prior invention, not current title. Your strongest immediate defense is active repair and a credible plan to pay." Clara showed her orders. "I can meet current rates, not £11 in arrears." "Then seek time based on income, safety work, and the disputed assessment. If the omitted strip belongs to Blackmere, someone has collected or exercised its water right without paying you." but we need the original tithe map and the stream lease." The parish clerk claimed both were missing. Miss Say's mouth tightened. Records often become missing when searched by the wrong person. The hearing was set for the fourth Monday after Clara's arrival. To demonstrate income, she needed more than apron cloth. She needed Hannah's low-salt colors, but the original bolt was gone, and half the valve code untranslated. Clara used what she knew. Traditional indigo required no metallic mordant. Matter could be fixed with alum if the water was controlled. The underground system offered rainwater and a spring rich in lime, provided the uphill inlet could be restored. Samuel followed the ceramic line across the yard to the unnumbered strip. Beneath brambles they found a capped stone well and a broken lead seal stamped with a bell. The well stood beyond the red stake none had planted, but within the boundary described by Clara's deed, from the ash coppice to the upper spring, thence following the ancient leat. Rook's men had diverted the spring into their channel through an iron pipe. Clara did not remove it. Miss Say obtained a surveyor from the neighboring parish, paid on credit, who recorded the encroachment in the presence of Vale and 2 farmers. The surveyor calculated that Rook's company had drawn the spring for at least 7 years, judging by corrosion and tree growth. The discovery gave Clara leverage, and it gave Gideon a reason to move faster. That Friday, the draper returned 12 yards of cloth, claiming the gray had spotted after rain. Clara tested it and found droplets rich in iron. Someone had sprinkled the folded bolt with contaminated water after delivery. The draper refused further orders rather than quarrel with Rook and company. Miriam wanted to announce the sabotage in the market. Clara stopped her. "Without proof, it becomes his word against ours. We test every yard before it leaves and seal each parcel." "Always careful," Miriam said bitterly. "Does careful ever win?" "Not alone." Clara carried the damaged cloth to the village pump on market morning. Before the gathered women, she washed one half with soap. The unwetted half held fast. The spotted half released orange streaks. She explained iron contamination without naming a culprit, then offered the sound portion at half price. A farmer's wife bought it for children's cloaks and ordered more. Care did not win alone. Demonstration gave it witnesses. Within a week, 4 women were sorting wool in the northern bay. Clara paid small piece rates from sales and kept every figure on a slate visible to them. Miriam managed washing. Samuel learned to wind bobbins while seated, faster than any child Clara had trained at her father's rooms. Vale fabricated a replacement spindle for the pump in exchange for cloth and a written debt. The works remained desperately fragile. Wind entered beneath the eaves. They could use only one vat. Production stopped whenever rain made the roof unsafe. Clara slept 5 hours a night and sometimes woke unable to close her dye-stiffened hands. Her father sent no word. Her mother sent a parcel containing Clara's winter dress and a page torn from a household Bible. In the margin beside Proverbs, Hannah Bell had written 4 numbers and the phrase, "Ask what the water leaves behind." The numbers matched no valve sequence Clara had copied. They did match the colored dials after she converted gallons to turns. She ran a trial through the restored tanks. Rainwater carried alum into the first cistern. Spring water entered the second. After cloth was dyed, the waste passed through beds of charcoal, chalk, and wool waste. Instead of flowing directly to the stream, the liquor left a pale crystalline residue in a shallow heated pan. Recovered alum. Hannah's apparatus reduced pollution because it recovered a costly mordant for reuse. The financial value and the public good were the same process. Clara repeated the trial 3 times, weighing residue on Valle's small balance. The recovery varied, but even the poorest results saved nearly a third of the alum. With repairs and proper filtration, it could save more. Miss Say advised silence until the hearing. They needed independent samples, written witnesses, and proof that the apparatus predated Rook's competing works. 2 nights before the magistrates met, smoke woke Clara. Fire ran along the roof over the dye house, fed by paraffin poured across old timber. She rang the handbell they used for shifts and dragged the sample books from the counting room. Samuel, who had been sleeping in the cottage while his grandmother was ill, stumbled into the yard. "Fetch Vale," Clara ordered. "Do not go inside again." The flames had not yet reached the northern weaving bays, but sparks fell through gaps. Clara and Miriam formed a bucket line from the pump as villagers arrived. Vale cut away a burning roof brace. Rain began after midnight, light at first, then hard enough to flatten smoke. By dawn, the dye-house roof was gone. One copper vat had split. The hidden chamber was flooded with black ash. No person was killed, but Thomas Vale's forearm was burned, 3 finished bolts were soaked, and the mechanical counter lay beneath fallen masonry. The constable found a broken paraffin flask outside the wall. It bore no name. Caleb Nunn had been seen drinking at the King's Arms until 10, and Gideon Rook had dined 6 miles away with a magistrate. Clara stood in the rain looking at the loss and felt, for the first time, that her father might have been right about consequence. The rates remained. Her best equipment was buried. She owed wages and £2 to the slater. The hearing was 48 hours away. Gideon's carriage stopped at the gate before noon. He took in the charred roof with solemn satisfaction. "This is what I feared." Clara's dress was streaked with soot. "You arrived quickly." "News travels. Sign the conveyance and I will pay every debt, including the doctor for Vale." "The apparatus frightened you before I restored it. Your imagination has become dangerous." Hannah Bell designed a recovery process here. Your father took the stream lease after the records burned. You took the cloth because you thought it proved what he had done. Something shifted in his eyes at Hannah's name. "A vanished dyer and a ruined machine," he said. "That is your defense?" It was not, but his knowledge had answered one question. He knew who Hannah was. Clara refused the conveyance. After he left, she sat on an overturned bucket until Miriam placed a cup of tea in her hands. "You protected Samuel before the books," Miriam said. "We all saw it." "That will not rebuild the roof." "No, but roofs are built by people." By evening, 18 villagers had come. Some brought timber, others food, old canvas, or labor. The farmer's wife who bought the spotted cloth brought £2 collected among market customers. Not everyone helped. The draper stayed away, and Mr. Hales warned that charity could not legalize a dangerous structure. Yet enough people had watched Clara test water, publish wages, and refuse to foul the stream that the ruin was no longer hers alone. They did not rebuild in a day. They made the site safe. Vale, his arm bandaged, directed men in removing loose slates. The underground chamber was pumped clear. Samples and Clara's copied calculations had survived in a biscuit tin beneath the counting house hearthstone. At the hearing, Gideon's solicitor described Blackmere as an idle industrial hazard occupied by an inexperienced woman. Clara presented current orders, payroll entries, repair receipts, the independent survey, water samples, and a plan limited to the 2 sound northern bays. Miss Say challenged the assessment because the parish map omitted land included in the deed. The magistrates declined immediate demolition. They gave Clara 6 weeks to pay £4 toward arrears, maintain barriers around the burned dye house, and produce a structural report. It was not victory. It was time purchased with evidence. Outside the hall, Gideon said quietly, "6 weeks will teach you what 30 days did not. That you require other men to remove a woman from property you want?" His smile returned. "That time belongs to whoever can afford it." The letter from London arrived the next morning. The Patent Office had found a provisional specification lodged jointly by Josiah Whitcombe and Hannah Bell in March 1843. For improvements in the separation, economical recovery, and reuse of mordants in textile coloration. The application had lapsed after no complete specification was filed. Enclosed was a copy of the deposit drawing, including a notation. Full schedules and trust instrument retained by J. Whitcombe pending witness execution. The drawing showed the underground tanks. It also showed a fifth line absent from the wall, a narrow recovery flue running from the heated pan to a proof cabinet beneath the loading bell. The bell itself was gone, but its bracket remained. Clara, Samuel, Vale, and Miss Say searched the masonry below it. Fire damage had exposed a vertical iron rod connected to the old countershaft. When they rotated the surviving paddle by hand, the rod lifted half an inch. At a precise sequence corresponding to the 4 numbers in Clara's Bible page, a stone beneath the loading threshold released with a dull click. Below it was not a chest, but a narrow iron drawer lined in slate. The fire of 1843 had blackened its outer face without reaching the contents. Inside were ceramic tiles incised with recipes, test results, names, and wage shares. Paper could burn or rot. Hannah had recorded the essential process in fired clay. One tile listed 12 women, including Agnes Pike, each allocated a fractional share in any savings or license income. Another named Clara May Whitcombe, daughter of Eliza Bell Whitcombe, as successor trustee should Josiah and Hannah be unable to serve. Clara stared at her own name until the letters blurred. She had been named before her birth. Clara May was her mother's full name, not hers. The successor was Clara's mother. The last tile instructed the reader to compare the woven schedule with the ceramic record because no complete copy should exist in one place. They had only half the woven schedule. Gideon had the rest. The tiles proved design and intention, but Miss Say remained cautious. A trust concerning future income may have failed if never executed. These are records, not necessarily the legal instrument. We need witnesses or the retained document. Agnes could identify names and practice. The patent office could establish the deposit. Clara's mother might testify about the shuttle and Bible. But where was the instrument? Samuel examined the empty slate drawer. It is shorter inside than outside. Clara measured. He was right by 3 inches. A false back slid upward when the iron rod was set to a second sequence incised on the final tile. Behind it lay a packet wrapped in tinfoil and oilskin. The papers were smoke-stained at the edges but legible. A deed of declaration signed by Josiah Whitcombe, witnessed by his clerk and a Methodist minister, establishing the Blackmere Workers' Improvement Trust. It assigned 1/3 of the net savings from the recovery process to trained workers, 1/3 to maintenance and clean water in Lower Mere, and 1/3 to the owner who operated the works under the process. Hannah Bell was named technical custodian. Clara's mother, then an infant, was contingent successor. There was also a statement by the injured watchman. He had seen Gideon's father, Nathaniel Rook, enter the counting room on the night of the fire. Nathaniel claimed he came to discuss the stream lease. The watchman saw him carrying a japanned document box as he left. Before the statement could be sworn before a magistrate, the watchman died of his burns. It was powerful evidence, but not complete proof of arson. Clara would not accuse a dead man beyond what the paper said. The packet contained a letter from Hannah to Eliza Whitcombe, Clara's mother. Hannah explained that Josiah had placed the trust papers in the proof cabinet after his clerk warned that Nathaniel Rook was trying to acquire the works' water at a forced sale. The cloth was the operational schedule and authentication key. Hannah fled because Ezra Whitcombe threatened to accuse her of the fire unless she surrendered all claim. She had not surrendered. She had gone to Leeds and spent 20 years teaching women dyers under another surname. Enclosed apprenticeship receipts showed that royalties from private instruction had been sent anonymously to several former Blackmere workers. The legacy was not a fortune. The patent had lapsed, the works were ruined, and no court could return lost decades. What remained was a viable process, an early record of industrial pollution control, a trust with identifiable beneficiaries, and proof that women dismissed as unskilled labor had created valuable knowledge. Clara understood why no one had found it. The cloth looked defective to anyone without weaving training. The cabinet opened only through the restored water counter. The legal proof and technical schedule had been separated. Fire, stripped machinery, and a diverted spring kept the mechanism dead for 33 years. She also understood why she could find it now. Her mother had given her the shuttle. The roof's decay exposed the pipe. Samuel noticed impossible dimensions, and repairing the tanks made the old counter speak again. No single person had solved Blackmere. Miss Say sought an injunction preventing Rook and Company from demolishing, entering, or altering the disputed watercourse while title and trust claims were examined. Gideon responded by producing the stolen bolt. He did not admit theft. Through his solicitor, he claimed the cloth had been among effects purchased by his father at the 1844 liquidation. Its border, he argued, contained nothing but decorative irregularity. Yet he submitted only 7 yards. Clara remembered 9. At the public inquiry convened in the county hall, tables displayed the ceramic tiles, patent office copy, trust deed, water survey, and Gideon's shortened bolt. Villagers filled the benches. Ezra Whitcombe arrived with Clara's pale mother on his arm. He did not look at his daughter. Gideon wore the composed expression he had worn beside the fireplace on the morning of the failed wedding. His solicitor attacked the chain of custody, Hannah's character, Agnes's memory, and Clara's competence. Miss Say did not ask the inquiry to accept a romance of hidden treasure. She built the case in layers. The patent office clerk authenticated the 1843 deposit. A ceramics expert from Leeds confirmed the tiles' clay, glaze, and firing were consistent with the Blackmere district and mid-century manufacture. He had been retained weeks earlier, not summoned at the last moment. The independent surveyor placed the spring and unnumbered strip within Clara's deed boundary. Agnes identified the listed workers and described the 4-water process before seeing the patent office drawing. Vale testified to the untouched mortar around the chamber and the mechanism's condition when opened. Clara's mother then rose. Ezra whispered sharply, but she stepped away from him. Her name was Eliza Clara Bell Whitcombe. Hannah Bell had been her aunt, not merely a worker. Josiah had married Hannah's sister against his family's wishes, and Ezra had spent years concealing the Bell connection because he considered trade kinship shameful. Eliza testified that Hannah visited her once in 1860, gave her the shuttle and Bible page, and made her promise to pass them to a daughter trained well enough to understand. "Why did you wait?" the commissioner asked. Eliza looked toward Clara. "Because fear becomes a household habit? I mistook silence for protection." Ezra left the hall before she sat down. Gideon's solicitor still had a point. The trust deed established intent, but did the woven schedule correspond to it? And had Gideon lawfully acquired the cloth? Clara requested that both surviving selvages be examined under magnification. The notched shuttle aligned with the border. The translated columns matched quantities incised on the tiles and figures in the patent office drawing. Where Gideon's bolt had been cut, the final threads ended mid-sequence. "Mr. Rook says he received 7 yards through the old liquidation," Clara said. "The length hidden beneath my loom was 9 yards. The missing 2 should bear the authentication line naming the trust." Gideon's calm failed. "There were never 9. "Then you know the condition in which I found it." He realized the trap too late. Until that moment, no witness had stated in public where or how the cloth had been stored. Miss Say produced Caleb Nunn's written statement. Faced with possible prosecution for burglary and questions about the fire, Nunn had admitted entering Blackmere with an old key supplied by Gideon. He stole the bolt, then cut off the final 2 yards on Gideon's instruction. He also admitted moving survey stakes and contaminating Clara's cloth. He denied setting the later fire, but disclosed that Gideon had paid him to purchase paraffin and frighten Miss Whitcombe out. The flask recovered at the scene carried a glassmaker's batch flaw matched to the remaining bottles in Rook's store. Nunn's word alone might have been self-serving. Account entries seized under the injunction supported him. Cash payments on the dates of the theft and fire entered as channel maintenance. Gideon's flaw was not anger but certainty. He had recorded every secret payment because he trusted ownership of the books more than loyalty of men. The cut section of cloth was found in a locked drawer at Rook's office. Its border read, Blackmere Trust, 12 shares, water kept clean. The commissioner referred evidence of burglary, conspiracy to damage property, falsified boundary claims, and attempted arson to the assizes. The civil order restored the spring pending final registration, recognized Clara's title to the disputed strip, and appointed Miss Say with 2 independent trustees to administer the old declaration. Rook and Company was required to account for unlawful water use. Gideon's creditors, alerted by the inquiry, discovered that he had borrowed against machinery twice. Within months, he lost control of both mills. He received no convenient absolution and offered no sincere apology. Ezra attempted one final claim. As Eliza's husband, he argued, any benefit through her succession belonged to him. The trustees answered that the property deed was already Clara's, the operational income would arise from Clara's labor, and the trust beneficiaries were independently named. Faced with Eliza's petition for separate protection of her property, and with public scrutiny of his concealment, Ezra withdrew. Legal recognition did not repair Blackmere. Winter arrived while half the site remained roofless. The trust's recovered compensation was modest and delayed by accounting. Clara paid £4 toward the rates from a combination of cloth sales and the villagers' loan, recording every contributor and repayment term. She chose not to patent Hannah's expired process anew, as though it were hers alone. With the trustees, she published the basic settling and recovery principles for local dyers, while keeping Blackmere's tested color recipes as the cooperative's working knowledge. Fees from training other works supported the water fund. The ceramic tiles and original cloth went on deposit at the county museum after exact copies were made for daily use. By February, the northern roof had been properly slated. By April, a rebuilt water wheel drove 2 restored looms bought second-hand from a bankrupt workshop. The great chimney remained cracked and unused. Clara adopted smaller, enclosed heating pans that consumed less coal. Vale's accounts showed every repair, debt, and hour of labor. No one pretended the entire 5-acre works had been rescued. Unsafe eastern bays were dismantled carefully, and their stone was stacked for future building. Agnes Pike became the first beneficiary to receive a trust payment. £3 14 shillings in recognition of her old share, followed by a small quarterly sum. She spent part of it on spectacles that could not restore her sight, then laughed at herself and used the remainder to buy Samuel a proper adjustable stool for the loom. Samuel proved gifted at pattern calculation. Clara arranged lessons with the schoolmaster in exchange for dyed cloth, and later apprenticed him at a full learner's wage. His foot still pained him. The story did not cure it. The work was adapted so he could move between seated tasks, counting, drafting, and mechanism repair without climbing unsafe stairs. Miriam became washhouse supervisor and the fiercest guardian of the settling tanks. She took samples upstream and downstream every Monday in clear glass bottles, labeling them before witnesses. When one batch showed discoloration, production stopped until a cracked valve was replaced. Profit spoke at Blackmere, but it no longer spoke alone. Some villagers remained skeptical. The draper who had returned the spoiled cloth never admitted cowardice. Mr. Hales continued to complain about the disorder of women reading rate books. Clara considered their discomfort a small, renewable source of warmth. Eliza left Whitcombe House in the spring and rented 2 rooms in the market town under Miss Say's guidance. She and Clara did not repair 28 years of silence in a single embrace. Eliza came to Blackmere on Thursdays, first as a visitor, then as the keeper of Hannah's correspondence. She apologized without asking Clara to declare the hurt finished. Clara learned that forgiveness could be honest while remaining incomplete. On the first anniversary of the refused wedding, the loading bell rang again. Vale had cast it from salvaged Blackmere iron. Around its rim were the names of Hannah Bell, Josiah Whitcombe, Agnes Pike, and the 11 other original workers. Clara's name was absent by her own choice. Beneath the bell, a new slate listed every current worker and left room for those who would follow. The cooperative employed 23 people by then, 14 of them women who had previously worked irregularly from home. Its cloth was known less for fashionable brilliance than for colors that held, accounts that could be inspected, and a stream in which minnows had returned. Training fees helped lay a clean water pipe to Lower Mere. The old counting room became an evening classroom where workers learned letters, figures, and the chemistry behind tasks they had once been told to perform without explanation. Clara stood beneath the bell at 6 in the evening with Hannah's shuttle in her hand. Beyond the yard, the recovered spring moved through stone channels, each branch visible and labeled. Water entered dark, useful rooms, carried color, surrendered what could be reclaimed, and left clearer than it had under the old mills. She had once believed independence meant needing nothing that another person could withhold. Blackmere had taught her a harder freedom. To choose obligations openly, to keep accounts fairly, to accept earned help without surrendering judgment, and to make knowledge difficult for any one powerful person to steal. Samuel pulled the rope. The bell's first note crossed the repaired roofs, the dismantled eastern bays, the village road, and the clean reach of stream below the works. It did not sound like a wedding bell or an alarm. It marked the end of a working day. Clara set the old shuttle beside the new wage book, closed the counting room door against the evening chill, and walked home through a place no longer mistaken for worthless.